There's not enough information online about maintaining long-distance relationships and if it's the right thing for you. And to be honest with you, I had a lot of friction with making this video. I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time, but I found that it's more of a niche issue, which only a few young men who are fighting in the trenches will come across. But I was thinking about it again today, and I was just like, you know what? This is the line of thinking which content creators go down, which just lead to such an unfulfilling process, trying to churn out the most mass-friendly content which applies to as many people as possible. And as you continue to go down that rabbit hole, your content just becomes less valuable and more of a chore to make. So honestly, even though this video is probably not going to do me any numbers, I genuinely hope this niche information proves valuable to the few of you boys who may be maintaining long-distance relationships, or you're thinking about entering one, okay? Because I know I'm going to get a bunch of pushback from guys who say like, Sam, long distance relationships, complete waste of time, fucking jacking off on Skype calls, pretty cringe, bro. But as someone who came from Birmingham, UK, my options for dating were fairly limited. And you might be able to relate to this too watching this. Like, you're in a big city. Everyone around you doesn't really align with what you're doing. You're not going to the club and doing ketamine in the bathrooms. You're not going to the house parties and drinking every weekend, okay? So why would you not open up your mind to the idea that perhaps a really good girl, perhaps your future wife, might actually not be in your city right now? Maybe you meet online, because with the rise of social media, this isn't that ludicrous of a thought to have. When I met my girlfriend, I first maintained it over a long distance before closing the distance by flying her out to Thailand to live with me. And our relationship is amazing, and she's such an amazing girl. But if I had a strong stance against long distance relationships, that wouldn't have been a possibility at all, and that would have been a massive shame. And I'm not advocating for long distance. I think it's less than ideal. Ideally, you want to meet a girl in real life and you go from there. But sometimes God throws wifey your way. You never know when you're going to meet wifey. You don't know how you're going to meet her. And you might meet her online. So you need to know how to maintain long distance relationships. I'm now going to paint myself as an authority figure on this subject. I am the CEO of long distance. I had very crippling anxiety and depression from the ages of like 14 to 22 years old, which meant as time went on, I spent more and more time online, not in the real world. It got so bad, in fact, that I literally just had panic attacks whenever I left the house. So I was genuinely chronically online, and that's obviously not a good thing. But what that does mean is that any interactions I had with women were online, because it was where my life basically was. So I ended up having a few long distance relationships, and I've learned a lot about what to do in those relationships and what not to do. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made, which you might be susceptible to making as well as a young man who is fighting in the trenches, is that you find yourself in a long distance relationship with a girl who you can't feasibly meet right now. Let me put it this way, okay? I was 21 years old and I ended up in a relationship with a girl who was from America, and we both had a myriad of issues. I was chronically depressed, anxious, and also completely flat broke with no sense of purpose in my life, and I'd spend like 12 hours a day video gaming. And then she was quite similar in the sense that she had some mental health issues. She was bipolar. She spent a lot of time playing League of Legends, which we ended up spending together, couple goals. And of course, she was also broke as fuck. So that leads me to the question of like, how do we feasibly meet within the next 6 months? Because in my opinion, that's the golden rule. If you can't feasibly meet each other physically in the next 6 months, this shit's not gonna work. Because at this point, you are at major risk of falling in love with the idea of her. You don't even have plans to meet each other. You're quite comfortable sort of mentally masturbating over the idea of her, over Skype calls, over Discord calls. When the reality is, you truly really start to get to know someone when you are with them physically. And that also is like a level of sacrifice that both of you make for the relationship, meeting each other. It can be quite scary to meet someone. Whereas getting into an online relationship, the barrier of entry is quite low. You could just be playing League of Legends together, and I could be like funny enough to make her laugh sometimes, and then you end up in this weird relationship dynamic like, yeah, we're dating, we love each other. But the reality is, when push comes to shove, if there was like a very minimal amount of sacrifice that you would have to make for one another in the relationship, it would probably fall apart. You're kind of together out of convenience, you know? So unless you're talking about feasibly visiting each other within the next 6 months, you're in a massive danger zone with your relationships. And I say feasibly because I pointed out one of the problems I had was that I had crippling social anxiety and depression, and also I was completely broke with no job, no money, no income. So I was in this relationship and I had actually like no way of meeting this girl. I couldn't book a flight. I couldn't even get on a flight because I couldn't even go to a corner store around the corner without having a panic attack. And this is a major issue, of course. And you are susceptible to falling into these types of relationships when you are a bit down bad, because maybe you didn't get much female attention throughout your life up to this point. So it can be really easy for you to have this scarcity mindset around women, and as soon as a woman gives you some attention, you go all in on that, even though logistically it's impossible that it works. And this happened to me a few times. I dated a girl from Norway, I dated a girl from America, I dated a Russian girl, and each time the honeymoon period was fantastic, but eventually the reality of our logistical nightmare came to a head and the relationships always came to an end quite brutally. This is absolutely foundational to any long distance relationship. You need a feasible plan to meet each other within the next 6 months, otherwise it's not real. And to build off this, you also need her parents' approval, because one of the most brutal lessons I learned is that after a few months of talking to this girl, and I was some way through my self-development journey now, so I defeated my social anxiety, I started to make a bit of money. It was definitely feasible to meet this girl. She was in the same country as me, so I wasn't getting on a flight or anything, it was just a train. I was speaking to this girl for a few months, and I started to really like this girl. So taking what I learned from my other relationships which failed, I made a plan to meet her within the next, X amount of months. I can't quite remember how long it was, and we did. And we were getting more and more excited to meet each other. And obviously when you first meet someone, especially if you've been speaking for a while, you might have expectations set because you really like each other. There's an extra bit of anxiety to get through because you're hoping that you reach those expectations that you've set through the texting or the calling that you've done over the last few months. So it's very good to be mindful of that as well. It will be difficult at first to meet each other if you have been speaking over text or call over some months, but it's just something that you've got to get through. But we made this plan. I had booked my train tickets. I bought a bouquet of flowers for this girl, okay? And the night before I was due to go on my train to meet her, I was just gonna take her on a lovely date, take her out for some dinner or something in a city near her. I was literally pacing up and down my lounge just because of how anxious but also really excited I was to meet her. I got a text from her and she basically just said that she can't meet me tomorrow. She told her parents that she was gonna meet a guy who she met on the internet, and they completely flipped. Obviously they come from a different time to our generation, and they've been filled up with all this propaganda that everyone on the internet are killers, psychopaths, whatever. And they absolutely put their foot down and they said, no, you're not gonna see this guy. And because she respected her parents, of course, this is a massive green flag. The whole date was off. And this broke my heart into a million pieces. This genuinely sent me off the rails a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't get a refund on my train ticket, and I burned the bouquet of flowers. And just like that, we had just stopped talking because there was no longer a feasible plan to actually meet each other. And this was a brutal lesson. If you're serious about a girl, I know there's a barrier of entry to speaking to your parents about your relationships because it might feel a little bit awkward, but it's very important that you do. And it's also very important that your partner does as well, because things like this can happen. And it also serves as a bit of a safety net as well. The relationship becomes a lot more real. Do you know what I mean? When the parents are involved, it's definitely worthwhile, and you can avoid something really destructive, heartbreaking like that. Because without the parents' approval, the plan to meet each other just disintegrates. It doesn't matter how both of you feel, it's gone. And you've been speaking to this girl with this expectation for this amount of months, and it was all for nothing. Very, very brutal lesson. So now that we have a plan to actually visit each other, because again, until you have a feasible plan, an actual plan, you right now are ready to book your tickets, your flights, whatever it is. you can do that right now. We're not just mentally masturbating and saying like, yeah, like I'll make shit work in the next few months and I'll figure some shit out. No, like there's a feasible plan. Now that we have that, we now need to talk about how we can maintain our relationship over distance. Because honestly, even if you are in a more conventional relationship, you meet a girl at a bar, you start talking, you get to know her, you fall in love, a conventional relationship, a physical relationship, there might be times that you have to spend away from this girl. So you need to learn how to maintain the relationship from a distance. And this can be very, very, very difficult, because a lot of the reassurance that we get from our relationships comes from the physical side. You might find that you might be more susceptible to anxiety when you're trying to maintain a relationship from distance, because you might get general anxiety about your physical relationships, which can just be solved by hugging your partner. You no longer have that option while maintaining the relationship from a distance. So you might need to put in a little bit of extra conscious effort to make sure that everything is running smoothly between yourself and your partner. And one of the most important things, in my opinion, in maintaining relationships from a distance is 100% a good morning message and a good night message. For me, in any relationships which I'm trying to maintain from a long distance, this is an absolute non-negotiable, and I'll tell you why. When you're at a distance with your partner, you can feel very disconnected with what they're doing day to day, especially if there's a time zone difference. There was a bit of a time with my current relationship where I was in Thailand and she was in the UK. So that is a 7-hour time zone difference, and it's very, very easy to feel insanely disconnected from your partner when, for example, it's like 7 p.m. for me and it's only midday for her. She's eating her lunch and I'm getting ready to like go to bed, you know. Having a good morning and a good night message gives your partner a sense of your day's structure. And it also tells them that when you wake up, one of the first things they think about is you, which is nice. And before they go to sleep, likewise, one of the very last things they think about is you. This can help ease many different levels of anxiety, and it can help your partner feel more a part of your day, because that's what we really want. We want to feel like we're involved. And without that level of structure, things can get very difficult, very convoluted, and your partner can start to feel very distant, uninvolved, and that is not what we want. The next big component of this is that you genuinely really have to trust this girl, because like I say, that level of reassurance you get from just hugging your partner, you no longer have anymore. So she really needs to be ticking all of the green flags that we look out for in like a good woman. She's not spending time in low quality environments like clubs, okay? Because man, I can't imagine dating a girl from a long distance, trying to not be anxious and not ask, you know, uncomfortable questions like, I wonder what she's doing right now, I wonder if she's speaking to some dudes, while she's spending any amount of time in a club environment where it is entirely geared towards sex and women are the trophy. For me personally, my standards are, I was gonna say high, but I don't think that's even that high of a standard, honestly. But in the modern world, it might seem like that is a high standard. My standards are set there. 0 time spent in any degen environments like that, clubs, house parties, whatever garbage may be going on. Because at that point, it starts to affect my work, my purpose. Because if I'm thinking constantly in the back of my head, what if, what if, what if, that is time spent away from my business, my work, and that is completely unacceptable. The woman who I choose to date should be my peace. She should be fueling me towards my work and my purpose, not the complete opposite. So you need to be able to completely trust her. And a big part of trust is, yeah, she doesn't want to spend time in these garbage environments around garbage people. Also her friends, if her friends are all a bunch of degenerates, you gotta be very careful for that. You don't want her to have male friends, because as a man, I know that doesn't fucking exist. I can tell you with absolute certainty that a male friend, if given the chance, would absolutely have sex with the girl that they're friends with, okay? So that's all cap. And a lot of people that might be listening to this and thinking like, oh Jesus, Sam, this seems like pretty intense, man. But the reason why I am so intense like this is, one, because I've given myself permission to actually have standards for the women that I keep in my life, because the world will try and take that away from you. They'll try and tell you that you're controlling, that you're toxic, or whatever. I say to that, fuck off. And honestly, if people don't like how I navigate my relationships, they are free to leave. I'm not holding anyone at gunpoint. These are just the standards that I have for people in my life, and that's that. And I'm able to have these standards because I also have high standards for myself. So why would I not have high standards for the women I keep in my life, and also friends as well? And also just the fact that I have experienced relationships where I just have this level of chronic anxiety, constantly thinking in the back of my head, like, what if, what if, what if? And it leads you to very dark places, like you fucking refreshing her Snapchat profile, seeing if her Snap score is going up. It's not healthy. And there's a few reasons why you might have this chronic anxiety, okay? One, she isn't the right girl because she's not willing to sacrifice her fun going out to the club, her male friends, whatever it may be. Two, you don't have strong enough frame. You're not willing to set these strong expectations. And three, you might be projecting. You might be a degenerate yourself. You might be going to the club and having all these disgusting casual sex engagements with women, having sex with women who have boyfriends, so on and so forth. And because you've had those experiences, you're now projecting them onto your woman, and that's not fair at all. Those are the three reasons why you might have chronic anxiety in your relationship. Either way, you need to have full trust in this girl. You can't have any questions in your head because otherwise it will torture you and it will eventually lead to the demise of your relationship. And guys, if you want to maintain a relationship from a distance, it requires sacrifice. Love is sacrifice. And it's up to you how much you're willing to sacrifice to make this work. I'll give you an example now. For my current relationship, I told you already, I did have to maintain it from a distance for some time. And for that to work, I did have to sacrifice an optimal sleeping pattern. Ideally, I wanted to be going to bed at, 9 p.m. and waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. I wasn't able to do that though, because if I wanted to be able to call my girlfriend, I had to stay awake a little bit longer. That's just one of the many sacrifices I made to make my relationship work. You've also got to sacrifice the physicality of your relationship. You're not going to have all of your sexual desires fulfilled because she's not there with you physically, at least for a time. And this is a very hard sacrifice to make, and a lot of men, they're not able to do it. A lot of men have that physicality already in their relationships, but still can't even sacrifice having physicality with other women. I don't want to go into the high value man shit again, but they're not willing to sacrifice for love, and so therefore they end up in a self-fulfilling prophecy where they only date hoes and then they continue to sleep around because all women are hoes, when the reality is, if they just sacrificed for love from the start, if they sacrifice, for example, their need to sleep with other women, they would find so much more value in their relationships with women. Same shit here, guys. If you're able to sacrifice for the sake of your love with a feasible plan of meeting each other within the next 6 months, you're gonna value this relationship so much more. And providing she's sacrificing as well, when you do get together, your bond is going to be that much stronger. And one final thing, I do want you to be totally open to the idea that this relationship might not work. And you should be very careful for the idea of slipping into mindsets of like, she's my soulmate, because you are gonna be susceptible to one-itis. One-itis being the only girl in the world syndrome that could ever fulfill me. And I was a massive victim of this. And I actually recently made a really good video delving deep on this. So I really recommend you check that out after watching this. It'll be the first link in the description. But guys, just remain open-minded that this relationship might not work out, and that's totally okay, because there's more than one woman in the world who can fulfill you, and there's more than one woman in the world who can fit into your frame, fit into your life, and who can love you wholeheartedly. It's very important that you keep this mindset in your relationship, because if you do fall into the mindset of scarcity with your relationships with women, it will actually destroy your relationships. So honestly, if you really do love this girl who you're dating right now, or you're thinking of dating, the best thing you can do to maintain that relationship is keep an open mind to the idea that it might not work out. I hope this video is helpful, boys. If you want to spend more time around young masculine men who are fighting their way through the trenches, you can join our movement Discord. It's a link in the description. And also, if you want to learn how to make money online from the comfort of your bedroom or traveling the world with your laptop, which is exactly what I did, you can join over 500 of my students doing exactly that. And as you can see on the screen, we really are getting excellent results inside of my academy. You can be next. Take care, boys.